some more, and we go live. Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to episode 101 of Word Ninjas Live. I am your regular host, Charles, your instigator of literary and creative insanity lately. And joining me tonight is Will on very cranky internet. He may have actually just dropped or gone silent. And Calvin,
Hello.
who is also having technical shenanigans. So it's
Yeah.
really just like old times.
Yeah.
Now, just because it's 101 doesn't mean that we have to go back to the basics of our podcasting style where everything breaks down as we go through an episode. We didn't have to go that traditional.
But it seems like we are this time.
Unfortunately. But at least after 100 episodes, we figured out how to roll with it. So,
Yeah, sure. But we can go, let's go with that.
yeah. So kicking things off is our regular first segment, weekly conversation topics. And we have two for this week. First one is going to be a relatively light topic, as we only have a few members tonight, but something that I wanted to delve into a little bit. It is just why is writing so integral to society and what powers does it actually hold? And it sounds like a really deep dive level topic, and it's something I would like to do a deep dive on in the future, probably for a couple articles. But I thought we'd at least kick that discussion off on a podcast, see how it goes, see what other people's input is. And it kind of encouraged me to actually look into it to see just what was the evolution of language itself. Because I know we were originally primarily based off of just oral traditions and storytelling, and it took a good while before it really stuck to write it all down and pass it on to future generations in a format that actually lasted more than one generation. Yes, we have stone tablets which last for a very good while, but there's a lot of other materials that can survive a surprising amount of time if you do them right. But it kind of led me down a rabbit hole, primarily on Wikipedia, because Wikipedia. But there was an interesting list and breakdown of the list of languages by first written accounts. So basically when they were first proven to exist, as far as we can tell currently. I'm sure some of those dates are approximations, but the link to that is in the show notes, or you can just go to Wikipedia, list of languages by first written accounts. I was kind of fascinated by just how many different languages there were throughout history and how some of them evolved over time. Especially English, which is always fun because I know as an English major, I'm used to understanding that there's Old English, there's Middle English, and there's Modern English. And a lot of people tend to attribute stuff like Shakespeare. Oh, that must be Old English because it sounds so silly and weird. That's actually not Old English. That's more, I want to say it's still more Modern English than Middle English even.
Really?
It might be Old Middle English. At least
I,
most of the representations that I've read. I haven't read any of the original non-edited versions.
I remember you showing me what Old English actually looked like.
None of
And
us can read Old English. They use almost runes to write Old English.
hmm,
And Middle English is the one that has like a lot of the extra vowels added onto words, like ye olde and whatnot.
hmm.
And some of the letters weren't really around, or they substituted them for others, or used them for double purposes. I think partially for typesetting purposes and handwriting purposes and all that. the main point of this discussion was really, I was curious just how has the written language evolved over time? Because it's fascinating, but then again, I'm an academic, so I find such things fascinating that the written language can evolve so much from its original iterations to current options out there, and how some things just stick no matter what, like the QWERTY keyboard, despite the original purpose of it is no longer relevant, and yet it still just sticks around, and stuff like that. I'm curious, depending on the crew's availability to talk, what your opinions are on just the history of language. Or am I the only one that's unnecessarily interested in this topic?
Well, assuming my internet will be stable enough. New place, new internet, new shenanigans. Uh, I've always found it somewhat interesting about how um, language has evolved, especially the various European languages, because you have like the Anglo-Saxon and the Germanic and the Latin and how they all intermingled. And I think we've talked before about how different words have different origins based on whether
Hmm.
they were Latin or Germanic or whatever.
Yeah, like why is the plural of goose geese, but the plural of moose not meese and stuff
Hmm.
like that? Because they originated from different root languages, which had different logistics for how you broke down the word and created it into something else and stuff like that.
Hmm. And having once taken a year in Latin, that is a very confusing language, and I'm glad it's a dead language. That one was confusing. Everything has a gender. You just have to remember what gender goes to what item because you can't interchange it.
They would just hate the modern world then.
Hmm. So it's interesting to see how it evolved from that and how the different languages evolved. I'm not that familiar with exact nomenclature and how the history goes,
Yeah,
other
same here.
than having once heard also that Shakespeare is actually more Middle English and not Old English.
Yeah. And Shakespeare created a fair amount of words in Middle English that still exist today.
Yes.
I think what's more impressive to me is not so much the evolution of English in the last 500-600 years, more than the evolution of English within the last 100 years. It's very interesting to see how much language can evolve, take shape, or in the minds of some people, bastardize.
Yeah, current language has definitely evolved pretty quickly within even the last couple decades. Because there's a lot of nouns that you can use as a verb now, which never used to be a thing.
Do you think that's a cultural or cultural slash societal thing, or like technology?
I think it's cultural based off of the technology. Because technology has exploded within our lifetimes and grown at an exponential rate, so such that we need to adapt language to keep up with it. But it's probably more cultural in that I don't think other cultures and languages necessarily take on the same styles of speech that we do necessarily.
Mm.
I haven't done that type of research. Like, how does Asia handle verbing nouns and stuff like that, since that's an entirely different lexicon altogether?
It would be interesting considering they have completely different character sets and completely different rules for the written language.
Hmm.
I even heard once, and I have no, unfortunately, like legitimate proof of this, but I heard that even in, I believe it was the kanji for Japanese, the language is so old that they will occasionally phase out kanji characters because they're just not used that much anymore. And if your name happens to use that kanji character, I hope you like writing it in hiragana. I think I don't have any absolute proof. That was just something I heard,
Hmm.
though, so don't quote me on it.
That wouldn't surprise me too much, considering I'm sure there are some kanji out there where whatever it's meant for just is no longer even remotely relevant because it was so potentially topical for the times.
Hmm.
Thankfully, you still have the hiragana and katakana as a
There
backup.
are several hundred characters in kanji. I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot.
Hmm. Which has always kind of intrigued me because I know in English and in various other European languages, you can shorten words, you can blend words to create new words and slang and stuff like that. I've always been curious how Chinese, Chinese, Japanese, Korean handle that type of stuff, especially in written languages. How do you do slang in katakana? Unfortunately, I do not know.
Carefully.
This is where we need to like stumble upon language experts and pick their brains about things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I know between all of us, we have a few people in our networks that at least are familiar with other languages that we could probably poke at offline, which is why I figure a deeper dive on this would be worthwhile in the future. And before I forget, while I was also doing some light research on this, I also found out that Wiki has a full list of constructed languages or fictional languages from literature,
Oh,
which
really?
is equally impressive. And of course, it has Tolkien on there because Tolkien is like the godfather of constructed languages for fiction and literature. I did not realize that there were constructed languages for music.
Really?
There are three. I can't pronounce that one. That one has little dots on it. Those always throw me off. But apparently there is a language used by 1970s French rock group Magma.
Hmm.
There's also Loxian, created by Roma Ryan, used on Enya's 2005 album Amarantine. And then there's the language Moss, created by Jackson Moore in 2009, a language with a musical phonology modeled on pigeons. What?
And I don't think that's the pigeons we're like normally we normally think about, as in like the ones we encounter in city streets and
Yeah, it's
yes.
not spelled. It. What is this? It has a phonology based on elementary melodic distinctions and a simple lexicon and grammar inspired by pigeons. Blah de blah. And that Pidgin language is a simplified version of a language that develops as a means of communication between two or more groups that do not have a language in common. Okay,
Oh, for our viewers and listeners, pigeon is spelled Pidgin in this instance.
yes. So it's kind of like a makeshift Rosetta Stone.
Like the kind of language that would come up when different Native American tribes had to interact with each other, since many of them had their own languages.
Hmm.
But when they traded together, they'd have to have a way of communicating together.
Oh, goodness. Apparently on this list, Furbish is a language. I'm not sure I want to acknowledge that. But it is pretty fascinating just how many languages there are out there over time, how many have phased out of relevance, and how many new ones are slowly evolving. I'm sure English will get an eventual break from modern English into some new modern or some such at some point.
Postmodern English.
Yes.
Just as long as it's not like a bastardized version of leet speak, I will be okay with that.
It's going to be net speak, cell phone speak.
Gross.
Everything's going to be brought down to as few characters as possible. Vowels will become obliterated, except for you.
The Welsh would implode. They would just secede from humanity and move to Pluto.
Or we would just devolve into just figuring out how to pronounce emojis.
Great. So
Well,
at this point, it would go full circle and just go straight back to pictograms.
unless we figure out ways to properly pronounce that poo emoji.
I'm going to leave that to someone else to figure out.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is something that I'd like to do a deeper dive on in the future because it is pretty fascinating and there's a lot to learn there. And as mentioned before, the links to both of those lists of languages is in the show notes, and both of them are from Wikipedia, so if you just want to go search via that method, by all means. And the second topic for this week is, what is one personal lesson you've learned from writing? And I decided to toss this one in kind of as a last minute idea because this is episode 101, so this is the beginner's course, at least in academia terminology. So I thought I'd toss in kind of an easy question, or an easy question in teachers' minds. Teachers always seem to think that the easier questions for them are going to be the easiest for students, and it's never that way. Because whenever I toss in an easy question, it always seems to confuse my crew. But, go to the show notes, dang it. There we go. But for myself, I tossed in that across all the writing that I've done, I've kind of learned that creating my own characters and worlds really allows me to answer a lot of what if scenarios that I come up with. Whether it's for fictional stories or just in my own life. Sometimes I toss those what if scenarios onto paper just to try and work it out. Because it doesn't always seem to work out in my head alone. It does help to transfer it down onto paper. And it's also become rather cathartic and, for better or worse, has helped me become who I am today. So that's why I find writing worthwhile and why I will continue doing it, no matter how frustrating it can get sometimes. And I saw that Will had an answer for it as well.
That I do. I was able to come up. I thought this was actually an easy question for once.
Yay!
It could be because I learned this personal lesson somewhat recently, within the past year. I learned it's important not to overthink things. This happened when I was working on Roommate and was distracting from the main plot with a lot of build-up and minor details, and ultimately it was taking away from my main story and just becoming boring. Excuse me. So I learned that it's important to stay focused, to have a timeline, an order of events, and to stick to them as efficiently as possible. And basically just be efficient and don't let little minor details distract you, or a fear of getting it wrong prevent you from making bigger steps and getting things done that need to be done, even if they're spooky scary.
And does Calvin have an answer to this by any chance?
I really wish I had an answer, but it's really, I don't know. It's not one anything in particular that I've learned. I've not so much that I've learned from writing more than I've gained from writing, which is
What have you gained from writing, other than words?
just confidence in general. Like knowing that I have this ability to create my own worlds or evoke emotions and things like that through words and sounds and anything I can think of. That's about it.
And to our viewers and listeners out there, post your answers to these questions into the YouTube comments below, or the iTunes if you are listening to the audio stream. All right, next up is the highlights reel. All right, hopefully screen share option will work the way it should. Why is that even an option? All right. So there was an interesting article over on IO9 earlier in last week about the difference between sexiness and sleaziness in superhero comics. Now, while the argument for why the both of those exist in just literature in general can be made, I understand why they focused specifically on superhero comics, because it is pretty prevalent in superhero comics, both sides of this. I know a lot of comics try to aim for sexiness because in our society, sex still sells to a degree, but there's plenty of times where they miss the mark and it tends to lean more towards just sleaziness, which is unfortunate. And this is actually just a segment of this article's page, but it mainly focused on like the recent start, well, not so recent now, but when the DC rebooted and Starfire changed personalities entirely, the artists at the time decided to do cheesecake shots, which unnecessary, even if it sells. It provided nothing to the story. It did not give her any extra character depth or anything. It was just, this is now an object. You should ogle it. And that is unfortunate because that character is a fantastic character and has a lot of heritage and character depth to her. Or she did. I haven't read Teen Titans in a while now, so I don't know how things have evolved since that reboot kicked off. But hopefully they managed to sort that out. That would be nice. And then on the flip side, they gave a more recent example of Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, who are now a couple. And that did add character depth and kind of push a few concepts into canon. But it did it in a tasteful and strategic manner. So it was interesting just how they kind of dig down to really see, like, their TLDR version for this whole piece is your primary goal to give dudes boners or tell a story? That's really what it boils down to between sexiness and sleaziness. If it tells a story, then chances are it's more towards sexiness. If you're just trying to get people horny, it's sleazy. Or just porn, in which case pitch it more as porn or NSFW writing, not superhero comics. It is worth the full read just because it's interesting how they break it all down. The next one up, if I can click on it. This one is more just for creative references. This is an article over on Priceonomics of what are the defining ingredients of a culture's cuisine. I am by no means a good chef, but I do like cooking and baking, so I found this fascinating. And as I do happen to have a steampunk tea shop in one of my stories where they do have explosive pastries, it was kind of interesting to see just what are some of the most common ingredients in cuisine based off of which culture. And a lot of these kind of made sense. A lot of these were somewhat surprising or I just never really thought of. But if you're writing about food or you want to add a bit of depth to some of your characters who do like food or want to go towards certain ethnic foods, this might be a worthwhile reference for you. And like, what's the most distinctive ingredient by cuisine? And a lot of these, I'm not even sure what they are, but it makes me want to look into it just to learn more. And it's showing up a bit weird on my screen at the moment, but they also have a meat-o-meter, the most commonly used meats by cuisine. And you can choose your meat from bacon, beef, chicken, ham, lamb, pork, and turkey. And I was kind of surprised that America shows up as fourth as for bacon. So there's 3 other cultures that use bacon a lot more than we do.
So you're telling me America has not reached its pinnacle of bacon yet?
Nope, not even close.
That's good to know. So it's not enough that we've baconed up our sausage.
Nope. You have to increase the baconception even more.
I'm up for that challenge.
And for whatever reason, this didn't load properly for me, so it's not really doing what it's supposed to do on my end, but it is really cool to see how they put all this together. So it's worth a peek, even if you're just interested in what some of the most the most popular ingredients happen to be for a culture. I find it amusing, but it almost feels cliche that whiskey is the most common ingredient for Irish.
Most distinctive.
Most distinctive. That's not as surprising. Fair enough. But still, compared to all the other distinctive ingredients, I think that's the only alcoholic one on the list.
I think what I found surprising was the amount of cultures that use butter as their most common ingredient.
Yeah. And I'm kind of intrigued as to why. Oh, I was about to say, why did they merge the English and the Scottish together? For whatever reason, I thought English meant American, but I believe American is separated somewhere down here. That second one. Also butter, though.
Not terribly surprising.
Not at all.
I actually find it interesting because it kind of works in with our language discussion earlier. It looks like common ingredients follow the same path. Because if you look, Eastern European, English, French, German, and Irish, Scandinavian, Southern Soul Food, and American are all butter.
What were the Vietnamese doing that they're the only ones with fish sauce?
Well, they are on an island, right? Peninsula? I forget.
Fair point.
It may not produce enough butter.
But yeah, well worth a perusal when you have a moment. It is pretty cool. Next one up. Oops, that's not the top. Over on Quartz, how libraries can compete with Google and Amazon. This was fascinating to read just on the concept of libraries are a public service place, but lately librarians have had to perceive a lot of their uh, attendees as almost customers, in that the more people that come in and utilize their space, the more worthwhile and relevant the place is, and the better funding they can get, and it trickles down. But not everyone thinks of the public library as a relevant resource. They just go to Google or Amazon to get a lot of their books or ebooks or materials. So it was interesting to see just how they take that on and what sort of research they have to figure all that out. And I admit it has been a good while since I've been to my library, simply because I have more books than I could possibly ever read in a lifetime, and yet I keep getting more. But I know my personal library also has public meeting rooms and event spaces. It has a 3D printer, which I still want to kind of play with at some point. It has computer access. It has all the current periodicals, and they keep those updated. It has a lot of reference materials that you just can't find online, but I do regularly forget. But this was an interesting read and well worth checking out, because it really does go into all the things that they're trying to do to get people's attention again and kind of balance out against Google and Amazon and other ebook providers and online resources and whatnot. And then over on Topless Robot, apparently Don Hertzfeldt is kickstartering It's Such a Beautiful Day to get it onto Blu-ray, which I found amusing. Partly because it's Don Hertzfeldt, and partly because I feel like It's Such a Beautiful Day came out a little while ago, so I'm surprised he took this long to try and get that onto Blu-ray. But he has always been a very unique storyteller. Well, at least that's one way of putting it.
Spoon is too big?
It can never be too big.
Tuesday's coming. Did you bring your coat?
No.
I am a banana.
My phone's on silent, so it's not going to go off at a convenient time for that.
Oh.
But yeah, if you're familiar with Don Hertzfeldt's style, and you wouldn't mind a Blu-ray copy of It's Such a Beautiful Day, you might want to check out the Kickstarter. Or you might just want to check it out because he's put in some very entertaining bonus rewards, or lack thereof. Because it's Don Hertzfeldt. So he wrote a lot of it in his style. And then, surprise, surprise, M. Night Shyamalan is trying to win back our trust. And a lot of people love to hate this guy because of some of the pieces he's done. And I keep forgetting, or I've blocked it out, the fact that he did The Last Airbender, so maybe that's why.
Ah.
Oh wow, and After Earth. I never did see that, but I didn't hear a single good review, which was disappointing. But apparently he's gonna give it another shot and I guess keep on trying. So good on him for perseverance, but I hope he eventually figures it out and does find a way to tell his stories in an engaging way, because I don't want him to turn into another Yui Bowl. One of them is enough.
If he can get back to like his sixth sense days, it could be good.
Yeah, if he can tap back into that style and mindset, he stands a good chance. But that was a good while ago now, so hopefully he takes the due time and diligence to figure out just how to go about this again. And if you want to read more details about that, the link is in the show notes, and it's over on IO9. And another piece of weird news, another remake is in the works, a live-action Sword in the Stone by one of the Game of Thrones writers. Game of Thrones, the television series, not the book series. If George R.R. Martin was writing this, there would be no one left alive by the end of the movie, I could almost guarantee you. There probably still will be very few people left alive by the end of this movie. But I don't know, I feel like it's a strong case of nostalgia glasses for me, but I really don't want or need a remake of this movie. I know it was made in 1963, so I'm sure it doesn't really hold up as well as I wish it would, but can't people just create new IPs rather than remaking a lot of the classics?
Doing a lot of this with the making live action remakes of the classics, Disney specifically, aren't they?
Yeah, and I know there was also recently reported a live action Aladdin movie, but a prequel to Aladdin, so it's going to be all about the genie. And since there's no feasible way they could have Robin Williams as part of it, I don't really care at the moment. And of course, they also mentioned The Jungle Book, which is also being worked on. I'm intrigued, but I don't know, I'm getting burnt out on remakes. I wouldn't mind some new IPs to kind of liven things up. And the last highlight for this week is our own playlist from Kineticon 2015, because we're spending this entire week slowly tossing up all of the press junkets, panels, and interviews that we got over that weekend. And it's also a convenient time to explain, if you're familiar with our channel and have been looking for some of our regularly scheduled events or videos, this is kind of a transition week. We're focusing this week on putting all the Kineticon content up, and then next week it's going to be back to the planned schedule of Game Break on Monday, podcast on Wednesday, Game Break on Thursday, phone going off while I'm talking.
On Wednesday.
Are you done? You're done ringing? You're done? You're good? Okay. Visual novels on Thursday, book reviews on Friday, Muse Food on Saturday. So starting on Monday, it's going to be kind of back to normal business. But in the meantime, we are tossing up 2 to 3 videos per day, and the full playlist is, of course, on our YouTube channel, Kineticon 2015, but it's also linked in the show notes for convenient access. And we're also posting on Facebook and Tumblr every day as to which videos are coming up. So if you track us that way, that's also another method for going about it. Those are your news and various highlights for this week. Now onwards to the Productivity and Inspiration Station segment, where we discuss various personal highlights and inspirations that we feel like sharing that have happened since last week. And as for myself, I got nothing. I'm taking a pass this week because I don't know. Nothing really worthwhile has happened on my end. And it's a little frustrating. I'm kind of used to having at least one thing to highlight, but I got nothing. How about the rest of you?
Observant regular viewers can see I'm in a new location. I moved. That's it. I moved. I'm still moving. Um, so yeah, between last week and this week, I changed locations and I've moved to a new apartment. And we're still steadily moving some of our stuff over. So no other productivity for me either. Probably not until I'm hoping
That was a very
August.
deleted response.
What was that?
I saw your comment in the chat and I
Oh.
posted like 10 minutes later.
So yeah, I probably won't get back into productivity and creativity until I'm figuring August. Uh, Also hoping, because I got internet installed today and it was working fine until a couple hours ago and it started to slow down a lot, like dial-up levels, which is disturbing. I'm hoping I can fix it, or without having to call my service provider and have them do stuff because that'll take forever. And I'd rather just poke some buttons, adjust some wires, and have it work.
Yeah, hopefully there's an easy solution.
I may just reset the router. We'll see.
When in doubt,
And
try turning it off and then on again.
how has Calvin fared this past week?
Um, good-ish. Um, all the Kineticon videos and stuff, I worked on those. I've been working with Richie on Infinity's Light, all the Infinity's Light stuff. I actually have a couple of new songs that I'm working on for that project. But in more recent breaking news, I think my desktop is dead.
What happened this time?
I was trying to figure out why my camera stopped working and then dead.
Well, that's not good.
No, it's not good. Especially because I can't afford to fix it right now. So, yeah, that happened. Yep.
Hopefully that is also something easily fixable.
Don't know yet. We'll see after the show. Oh yeah, that's why I wrote in the show notes Bork. Because Bork, as in my desktop, it is borked.
Always something.
Hmm.
But before we let you get to fixing your computer, we have the events segment. And we have still the 3 events left for the year. AkaiCon is coming up really fast. That's going to be a fun, terrifying time. August 7th to 9th in Tennessee. I forget specifically where offhand.
Franklin.
Yeah. And Calvin and I are attending and joining the OTP manga and FTP cruise. That's going to be weird. I'm going to have to work for Richie.
I know he's looking forward to that.
Oh dear. And also in August, we have Inconceivable up in Northampton, Mass. And the full crew is going to be there, and several of us are going to be there as press as well. That one's going to be fun. I mean, I'm sure AkaiCon's going to be fun too, but I look forward to Inconceivable. I had fun last year. And I look forward to seeing how they kick things up for year two.
Yes. Yes.
And then wrapping up our convention year is Hartford Comic Con, and I'm officially announcing that we got the dates wrong for I don't know how long. I apologize for that, but we recently realized, hey, it's actually September 19th and 20th. Not, I think we had the 7th and 9th down
Yeah.
written. So apologies for that. The website has it right. Thankfully, our hotel reservation has it right. It's just our show notes have been off for an undetermined amount of time. But the full crew is going there as vendors, and I'm continuing my battle to figure out press logistics. I'm going to start poking another few email addresses that I've tracked down to figure that out. I just want an answer. Yes or no. That's all I want right now. At least as a start. Because if it's yes, then there's follow-up questions. If it's no, then there's general flailing around in circles. But we'll see. But with that, that's everything we got for this week. That's a show. Thank you, everyone, for checking in and tuning in and all that for episode 101 of Word Ninjas Live. If we have entertained you in any way, shape, or form in the past hour, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can watch, comment, and thumbs up all the various shenanigans that we get up to, from the Word Ninjas Live podcast to our Game Break series, to book reviews, to creative prompts, to convention shenanigans, all that good stuff. You can also talk to us on social media. We're over on Twitter at FCWordNinja. We're on Tumblr, fcwordninja.tumblr.com, and Facebook, facebook.com/fullcoveragewriters. And if you want to help fund all of our various crazy shenanigans and endeavors, go check out the Etsy store, etsy.com/shop/fullcoveragewriters, where we have buttons, bookmarks, a booklet on warping the fabric of time itself so you can be creative, plus our latest ebook, which is a full 30-article writer's kit with optional ebook version. The link to the ebook is in the link to the audiobook is in the ebook. Yes. I'll get it right eventually. It's new.
It's shiny.
Yes.
It's awesome. All at the same time. You should check it out.
And all of those funds help get us to these conventions and help us cover all the crazy shenanigans that go on there. Like, I know today we put up a lot of fun, two very fun press junkets, and also, I believe, the George Takei Q&A.
Yes.
Which I still need to finish watching. I only got about 3/4 through, and then I had to do work. But it looked like a lot of fun. Definitely worth checking out. And if you want to track me down, you'll be able to find me at those 3 conventions I mentioned just a few minutes ago, or you can talk to me over on my Tumblr page, which is fancypantswolf.tumblr.com. Where can people track down Will when he's not on dial-up?
You can hopefully find me on my Tumblr page at darkhom.tumblr.com. That's darkhom.tumblr.com. I'm trying to get better at posting updates for this, so you can check out stuff from My Roommate's a Stripper at myroommatesastripper.tumblr.com. Or again, I'm going to try and do at least, I don't know, weekly updates. We'll see how things go. And you can support me on my Patreon at patreon.com/darkhom.
And where can people track down Calvin?
Instagram is the best place for the moment. Instagram is CCWII. So look there to see what I'm up to.
And if you want to track down Justin or Ed, all of our various social media links are in the About Us page over on fcwriters.com. Also, another website worth checking out because we also toss everything over there, plus a few other shiny baubles. And with that, thank you all for joining us for episode 101 of Word Ninjas Live. Come back next Wednesday for 102. And until then, go do something creative. Go have fun. See you all next week. Some more, and we go live. Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to episode 101 of Word Ninjas Live. I am your regular host, Charles, your instigator of literary and creative insanity lately. And joining me tonight is Will on very cranky internet. He may have actually just dropped or gone silent. And Calvin,
Hello.
who is also having technical shenanigans. So it's
Yeah.
really just like old times.
Yeah.
Now, just because it's 101 doesn't mean that we have to go back to the basics of our podcasting style where everything breaks down as we go through an episode. We didn't have to go that traditional.
Really?
It might be old Middle English. At least
I-
most of the representations that I've read. I haven't read any of the original non-edited versions.
I remember you showing me what Old English actually looked like.
None
Yeah.
of us can read Old English. They use almost runes to write Old English.
Hmm.
And Middle English is the one that has like a lot of the extra vowels added onto words, like ye olde and whatnot.
Mm.
And some of the letters weren't really around, or they substituted them for others, or used them for double purposes. I think partially for typesetting purposes and handwriting purposes and all that. Discussion off on a podcast, see how it goes, see what other people's input is. And it kind of encouraged me to actually look into it to see just what was the evolution of language itself. Because I know we were originally primarily based off of just oral traditions and storytelling, and it took a good while before it really stuck to write it all down and pass it on to future generations in a format that actually lasted more than one generation. Yes, we have stone tablets which last for a very good while, but there's a lot of other materials that can survive a surprising amount of time if you do them right. But it kind of led me down a rabbit hole, primarily on Wikipedia, because Wikipedia. But there was an interesting list and breakdown of the list of languages by first written accounts. So basically when they were...
But it seems like we are this time.
Unfortunately. But at least after 100 episodes, we figured out how to roll with it. So,
Yeah, sure. But we can go. Let's go with that.
yeah. So kicking things off is our regular first segment, weekly conversation topics. And we have two for this week. First one is going to be a relatively light topic, as we only have a few members tonight, but something that I wanted to delve into a little bit. It is just why is writing so integral to society and what powers does it actually hold? And it sounds like a really deep dive level topic, and it's something I would like to do a deep dive on in the future, probably for a couple articles. But I thought we'd at least kick that first proven to exist, as far as we can tell currently. I'm sure some of those dates are approximations, but The link to that is in the show notes, or you can just go to Wikipedia, list of languages by first written accounts. I was kind of fascinated by just how many different languages there were throughout history and how some of them evolved over time, especially English, which is always fun because I know as an English major, I'm used to understanding that there's Old English, there's Middle English, and there's Modern English. And a lot of people tend to attribute stuff like Shakespeare. Oh, that must be Old English because it sounds so silly and weird. That's actually not Old English. That's more, I want to say it's still more Modern English than Middle English, even.